Great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time away from the sun to be here. We all really appreciate it. We have quite a full house tonight, so it's going to be great. So welcome to the Nickel Before Show. I am your host, Ife Olua Victoria Oludamilola Alaba, but you can call me Ife Alaba. This is going to be a super fun night, and we're going to talk to two guests who are filmmakers and directors, and we're just going to ask them a few questions and get to know them and their journey and why they do what they do. Great. So, now that we've done that, I'm going to read the synopsis of each film, and then we're going to welcome our guests. Cool. So the two directors that we're going to be talking to today are Minerva Navaska and Chen Sing Yap. And yeah, so can we welcome Minerva and Chang? Woo! That's our big balloon. So that's, if if the before show gets cancelled, we have another one called Big Balloon. So you can be guests on that one as well.
What's the Big Balloon show all about?
The Big Balloon.
Okay, self-explanatory.
So intricate. So you guys are filmmakers, directors, and Minerva, your film is called Guardians. It is about, on a dark walk home, a young woman calls her loved ones to protect her from the threat of violence. This doc from Sheridan student Minerva Marie Navaska is a meditation on fear and on the burden of responsibility placed on women and girls to protect themselves against unseen threats at all times, from all places, especially at night. Can we have a little round of applause for that? And Chen's film is called Feeling the Apocalypse. Struggling with his own climate anxiety and grief, psychotherapist Anderson Todd thinks about what it means to live in a world that's dying. Really grim, but let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. First of all, to start, just tell us about yourselves and why you do what you do and why you chose to make these films. Minerva, you can start.
Sure. This might not be common knowledge, but CS and I are actually roommates. We come from the same college in Oakville, Ontario. And we both made our respective films for one of our third year classes. And for me specifically, I think what was a big inspiration for Guardians is I was planning on doing a whole different documentary based on a completely different subject, but at the start of our school term, there were news that at a nearby university, 40 or so girls had been roofied at a party. And so I read that, and instead of being afraid of, oh my God, is this going to happen at our college, I became very, very angry of why wouldn't this happen at a college or a fucking university somewhere in Ontario? And I became very obsessed with the idea of how long has this sense of normalization for our safety, the jeopardy of our safety been part of our identity as women. And so that's where Guardians took place, which kind of explores what it means to live with that paranoia throughout your entire life, and what burden that kind of creates in a person.
So, Chen, tell us about your film and and why.
Feeling the Apocalypse was made in late 2021, I think, yes. And I think in that time, during that time, I was struggling with climate anxiety because that year, I believe I kind of started looking into things like climate change and systems collapse, overshoot, things like that. So I was kind of looking into these sort of issues that were it wasn't really just about climate change. It was kind of about how the choices that our global civilization has made and will continue to make are leading us all down this path, and sort of the enormity of that kind of hit me, and like I started having trouble sleeping. I started thinking about it every day, and I kind of still do. And so when we got back to school after the summer break, we were asked to make a documentary, and I couldn't really, because it was possessing like my entire life at that point. So I couldn't really make anything else. I couldn't make a film about any other topic at that time in my life. Yeah.
Those two topics are really hard-hitting topics. So you've explained a little bit about why you chose these themes, but why is it important for everyone else to, understand why you chose these themes?
I think one of the questions that I faced when I was creating Guardians is like, who is the target audience of this film? Is it men who don't understand what women are going through? Is it for younger women who don't really know the realities yet and want like a how-to guide of how to protect themselves during the night? And the answer is neither of those. I think ultimately what my target audience is and has become are women who already live this reality. Even though within the documentary we talk about like, bring your keys with you and like stick them exactly this way between your fingers, and like bring a flashlight and all of that. We don't need to know that because we already do. It's been ingrained in our minds ever since we were like 9, ever since we were able to step out of the house. And so I think my target audience became women who need to feel catharsis over that, women who feel scared walking the streets at night and feeling like they're weak because of it, but it's not. It's normal to feel afraid if you've been living your entire life as prey.
So I noticed that in your film, you were talking to a lot of family members, a lot of friends. What was that conversation like how did they feel about being a part of it? And was it scary for them? Was it weird? Or was it just like a, normal casual conversation?
Yeah, I mean, part of like the whole idea of like this has been so normalized within girls and within my own family is that I make these calls all the time. So my parents, my friends, they've come to expect these calls. So it was really, really casual. And side note, all of the interviews within that film are like completely candid. I had their permission beforehand to use their recordings, but they didn't know that that specific call was going to be recorded. So yeah, it was really chill. If you notice at the very end of the film, my mom goes to like ask if I've had dinner. It's like, oh, are you in danger? No, not anymore. And then she's like, okay, have you had dinner yet? It's a very quick flip.
Chen, for you, how has the response been to the film?
Generally speaking, I've gotten a good response, and it's hard to gauge the bad responses, and maybe I should qualify what a bad response is. I guess one of the main concerns I had when making Feeling Apocalypse and really sort of any like climate film, I think, is like you sort of want to toe that line between inspiring like someone to act and versus like sort of like making them feel like this despair, and then like sort of like a paralyzing despair that makes them ignore the climate problem even more, and that's kind of like really hard to like to sort of like be in the middle of, because like everybody has like different breakpoints, right? Everybody has a different like level of like comfort with like the climate problem. Like I think there were some people who have like some of my friends who have told me like they like after seeing it, like weeks after, they're still kind of feeling a bit down about some of the topics that I brought up. I know online I read one or two comments that were like pretty negative. Yeah, so but the good comments, they're kind of been they get a sense of hope from the film, which is sort of like what I'm trying to go for. But I think with a documentary like this, your end goal is kind of impact, right? Like, how does that how does this change someone's lifestyle? And that's such a difficult thing to measure. And like I'm just sort of like beginning to sort of like figure out like how does this film fit into like education or climate communications. And yeah, just like it's been so interesting sort of like figuring that out. And like I've sent like this film to different sorts of festivals. I found that it has a lot of traction in festivals that are made that are sort of like run by and for climate and wildlife activists, right? Because like I didn't think about this before, but like obviously the people who are on the front lines of this fight for conservation and climate, they're getting like so much of like the worst parts of the climate problem. They're like look at it every day and engage with it constantly. So of course they would be like some among the people who most need that mental health assistance. Yeah.
That's very important. And it's interesting that you say towing the line between seriousness and, you know, making sure that it's palatable for people. You know, so as a director and as a filmmaker, how did you walk the line between communicating how serious this topic is, but also making sure that people were not falling into like hopelessness?
What I found that is that like humor is very important. That's why like there's a bit of humor in Feeling Apocalypse, and I think that really sort of like balances out the despair. And like I think because like this isn't just like a problem that's just sort of in the corner and then you come to it sometimes. It's kind of like a problem that's everywhere and it will continue to be everywhere. So it's more like it's a part of life. And when something is a part of life, then like sometimes you have to laugh at it. And like I think it should be okay for us to treat it like that sometimes, because it's part of our coping mechanism for life.
My favorite line to the in the film is the world is ending, let's have lunch. And it was like such a like grim day. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna make some lunch now. So I do think it had a lot of humor to it to make sure that people could digest it. Minerva, in terms of how you made the film and using the medium that you used, just you being the only person that was seen there, why was that so important for you to be like that sole character?
Ooh, I feel like above the narrative importance of it, I feel like that was largely a technical like solution. We made this film in school. We made both our films in school, and with Guardians being made right out of a pandemic, barely out of a pandemic, I knew that we were limited to very small crews and very small casts, if any at all. And I knew that if I was going to bring in these people who I was calling, there would be not only the challenge of like getting them to the actual location, but also like what will this look like on a Zoom screen. I feel like that will just age the film considerably right afterwards. So I feel like as for stylization, it just was the easiest course of action for our entire team. And also Rowan's over there, he was one of the crew members for the team, and he remembers like doing a lot of like walking that night. We had like rain, we had like lots of very dim and kind of sketchy areas. So I can't and would never consider putting like my grandparents and my parents through that.
So you said that you were in a lot of sketchy areas. Did you feel the gravity of the situation as you were trying to portray the message you were portraying?
Surprisingly not, just because I was surrounded by like a bunch of really close collaborators, and I think everyone just tried their best to make it a comforting space despite like all of the physicality that set took. And like obviously the subject matter. I feel like we came in with a clear plan of what we wanted and then just tried to get through it as fast as possible to make sure that we weren't, like no one was feeling unsafe.
This is a question for both of you. What was your favorite moment when it came to working on these films?
I need some thinking time. Honestly, I think I find it difficult to sort of like narrow it down to one specific moment. So I'm gonna cheat here and I'm gonna say like it's honestly like a series of specific moments, because I was trying to think of like the moment at which I completed Feeling the Apocalypse, and like I couldn't quite pin it down. I think because like the film was sort of like being pieced together by Lego bricks for like months with me and Rowan, my animator. So we started with like this previous sequence, and we've started this previous sequence where I just had like this like very crude stock images like to stand in for everything, because I had a voice overlaid down first and then like the stock images, and like sort of like every week or so you could like slowly see the film coming together, and it was like so exciting. So like I could like just to, because sometimes with a film like it's almost you have to wait to a certain point and then it clicks. But with this one, it was definitely like such a slow, it was just such a gradual process. It was such a interesting thing to be a part of. I guess if I had to like name a specific moment, it would be when we did the stop motion for real. When we had one day in the studio where we sort of like did like specific stop motion moments that were all like totally in camera, and like so the night after we did that, I put it all together in my editing program, and it looked exactly how I wanted it to look, and it was such a happy moment for me. Yeah.
Talking about animation and the way you did the film, why did you choose to carry across your message in that form?
Well, so there's two answers. The first one is pretty boring. The first one is like I wanted to insulate my subject from COVID concerns. So the second reason is I think animation has a certain the medium of animation kind of like foregrounds like the sort of like this universal humanity of your characters, and then like sort of like the other some of the more material, or you get the background, some of the more material aspects of your character and the world that they live in. So it kind of allows you to sort of fine tune your emotional impact and your message a bit more in certain ways that live action just can't quite do. Yeah.
So Minerva, you talked about how the moment where your supervisor said that this was provocative. That's really interesting because the film really resonated with me as well, because everything was just so like, oh yeah, when I'm walking down the street, I really have to like look to the left, look to the right, and make sure that I'm clutching things, and just that like fear that you don't like think of, but it's just so normal. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other women have felt that way. How has the response to the film and the message made you feel?
Oh, yeah. Well, this kind of answers your question. I'm really sorry that you feel that way. It makes me happy. Like, as with any other filmmaker, I'm glad that the message resonates, and I'm glad that the film has had an impact. But at the same time, like, it makes me feel very sad that it's a universal experience, and it shouldn't be, but I don't know. Yeah, there's not much I can say between, like, I get angry and I get sad, and I hope that it's not the case anymore. I wish for a world in which my film is completely irrelevant.
So, can you both share your experience about being film students? What are the big things that you've learned at Sheridan College so far?
That's kind of a. So can you repeat it? Because it's kind of broad.
Okay, cool. So what is your favorite thing about being a film student been so far?
I think my favorite thing about being a film student is kind of the room to make mistakes. I think because in film school, the stakes are not if you don't do the if you do this wrong, then your job is in danger, right? Because if you screw up at work too many times, then like people come to talk to you and say like you can't keep doing this. But then in film school, not only can you like are you allowed to screw up? Like the sort of definition of screwing up is like it's sort of different. It's a lot more generous, and then you can make your own definition of what it is to be successful, and that's kind of like the point of film school, to figure out like what do you want to do, and like that's such a good place to do that among like other people, and I guess the other thing that's related to that is like you get to see a lot of diversity of opinion and ways to tell a story, and you really get to have a long conversation about like the story itself rather than the deadline or like you know because before I came to film school I was working in the television industry in Singapore, and like we had so few conversations about sort of like the story. So much of our conversations at work was like about money and like deadlines and scheduling and like yeah, and I really relish having that opportunity to really dig into the storytelling aspect.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing. Like, film school taught me how to fail. Before I became a director, well, I've always wanted to be a director, but I was actually going into producing before. I produced one of like CS's films in like the summer after first year. That was actually how we started collaborating beforehand. But even though it wasn't really where my passion lay, I knew that I was good at it in terms of like the organization of it, in terms of the team management of it all. And I knew that I was going to be able to get a job, like as a producer, as producing. And even though my family has been really supportive of me going into filmmaking, I knew that coming in from a lower income family, like I don't have a space to fail. Like at the end of the day, I know that they're going to be counting on me in terms of like getting my income to support them further in life. And so it's not just about me anymore, it's about me and my like family. So I kind of held myself to an impossible standard of like, I cannot fail, like it's not possible. And it wasn't until actually COVID, when we were locked up and we weren't able to do these like big crew projects that I anticipated doing when I first started college, that I was just able to revert back into getting my DSLR and running around and like doing the shots myself, figuring out the editing myself, and like truly experimenting and figuring out what I wanted to say. And I think it wasn't until I gave myself that room and I was able to get that room that I became a director and a creator, truly.
So talking about how it's not just about you and it's also about your family. I know for me, when I said I want to be a musician, for my my immediate family was amazing. My extended family was, so we sent you to Canada to go and do Tweety board, Abby. So did that really play into like your mind of like what would your family think, your extended family think about your profession?
That's interesting. No, I kind of didn't really care. I feel like I cared more about like what does my family think, and figuring out how I was going to get their support. But at the end of the day, they were very, very supportive. I didn't have to try much at all because I was already overworking myself like during senior year when I was doing my college applications. And even in like first year when I started going to like Sheridan and encountering so many talented people like CS, like how am I going to collaborate with such amazing people? But I think there is a conversation to be had about like why would marginalized students, especially those from a lower income, have to feel like they're truly exceptional before they even feel welcome to try.
On that note, how does being immigrants or children of immigrants affect how you make your films and what message you choose to pass across? And how does it generally affect your filmmaking?
This is a bit of a, I guess, kind of a. I guess I haven't really given a ton of thought to it before. My family lives back in Singapore, and my father was an immigrant who was in Singapore. He was born in China, then he moved to Malaysia, and then he moved from there to Singapore. But I guess I haven't thought too much about how that has changed me. I suppose, like going back to like what you asked Minerva earlier about sort of acceptance of like acceptance of like our career paths in life, about going to film school and choosing film as a career. I think part of like that equation for me kind of was about like I knew I didn't want to live and work in Singapore forever, and like I anticipated like quite a lot of pushback from my parents when I decided to come to Canada. So, and I guess weirdly there was a lot less than I anticipated. I think my parents saw that at least like to my father it was kind of like I think he reached back into his own experiences with moving from place to place, and he even though he didn't understand film, he doesn't like watch my films or anything. He understood that like sometimes you just gotta you like your place is not here and you have to go somewhere else. Yeah.
Minerva?
I was really moved by CS and I couldn't remember the question, unfortunately.
I also was so moved that I cannot remember.
Stop.
That I also can't remember. Just brought me to like tears. I can't. So I will move on to the next question. What advice would you have for people who want to go into film school or considering entering the industry?
Oh, that's so interesting. I guess a lot of it depends on like what resources they have. Like for example, a lot of advice that I would give to myself wouldn't be the same thing that I would give to someone who, for example, lives in Oakville and like lives with their parents and already has a lot of resources. I think one of the biggest obstacles and like relationships that I've had to figure out over the years is my relationship with burnout and overwork. And I think I would really, really stress having a healthy work-life balance. Like ultimately you can't make films if you have no life to make films about, if you have no stories and like no connections and relationships to like feel passion for and like ultimately want to express to a larger audience. But also like at the end of the day, we have the lovely privilege of making silly little films for other people to laugh at or cry at, and it's not worth your life. I know that this is a cutthroat industry in which people expect you to work 12, 14-hour days. And thankfully, that is being reduced in this day and age. People are less tolerant of that kind of culture anymore. But I know firsthand the pressure that that kind of burdens someone if they feel like they already don't belong creating media, and that like desperation to prove themselves, it can put someone in a spiral very quickly. So I would encourage them to look after themselves before their art.
Snaps, 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 snaps. Chen, do you have any advice for people who want to enter the industry?
I just wanted to second like Minerva's point about like making sure you have a life, because I think the big thing you see in film school is like a lot of people like their experiences that they have, they aren't very varied, or like they sort of like stayed in like this like lane for like a long time, and then they are like a little bit afraid to branch out. But then when it comes to writing a story, then suddenly they want to write a story about like, you know, that's like very far outside their experiences, or like it's kind of like they haven't lived. I don't want to like make it like an ageist thing, but like I guess they haven't gone out and like done enough stuff, or like like been adventurous enough with to sort of like figure out like to have like interesting and real I don't know, this sounds very pretentious, but but like yeah, like sort of going out and like not just like getting yourself into situations where you learn more about yourself and the world around you, but also sort of like making sure that like your filmmaking journey also like takes you to those places. So there's that, and also I think just kind of like if you're going to film school, you should be sort of like taking advantage of like everything that offers you, because film school is really expensive, and you don't want to waste that opportunity. If you're going to a good film school, there's going to be so much that they offer you in terms of connections, in terms of like professors and like access to equipment, and like you really want to like dig into like what does this how can I best kind of like utilize the resources offered to me at this point in time, and you kind of take that into the workplace when you graduate, because like when you graduate and then you go to like workplaces, they offer you like certain benefits and access to things as well. So just always be thinking about that.
Snaps. So, getting to our last few questions, your films have been screening all over Canada and festivals. How has that been going? Is it exciting? Is it scary? What has that journey been like?
I cringe whenever I watch the film. It still hasn't worn off. Every single one of my films that I've seen up on screen, I'm like, oh my God. But no, it's been super gratifying. Last November, CS and I had the opportunity to go to Vancouver for the Vancouver Asian Film Festival. And we were able to get a school travel grant to fly all the way over there. And if you had told me at the very start of my filmmaking career, or at the very start of film school, that I would be basically flying halfway across the country for like $12 at the end of the day, I would have dove in headfirst with no hesitation and like no imposter syndrome or anything. I'm just like, okay, yeah, this can actually work out. So I feel like it's been a very big privilege to be doing what we do and getting like the resources that we've had. It's been more support than I could have ever been expecting.
And Chen, for you?
I think for me, sort of sending my film to a lot of festivals. I think I'm about to somewhere between 30 to 40 festivals for Feeling Apocalypse now. So I kind of just went. Thank you. I went very kind of like a little bit scattergun with it, because it was also sort of intended for me to be like this learning experience for myself. And I think what what has helped for me is it has helped me put my film in this like larger context of like distribution and like what is the purpose of festivals, right? Because I feel like a common mistake that maybe like film students and other emergent filmmakers make is that like for them like the festival and like the festival laurel is kind of like the end point. It's it's just kind of like it's and for me it's just sort of taking myself off that that assumption that and sort of like thinking about my film in terms of like how does it reach people and what role do festivals fulfill in that. Yeah.
So are there any exciting projects that you're working on that are can you give us like a little secret under wraps exclusive that you're working on?
Well, we just finished our thesis film that we collaborated on. It's called Desync. It's about mother and daughter immigrant mother and daughter miscommunication and how we struggle to express affection even though there's so much of it. CS was my lovely co-writer and associate producer, and I directed it. And it's going to be starting its festival run very, very shortly. As for me, I want to work on this one short that I've had in my mind for like a long time now. It's about how immigrants have to let go of their cultural pride in order to assimilate into white society, in order to be granted the privileges of being in a white society.
Hectic. Chen, are there any personal projects that you're working on?
Well, we just finished our capstone project, Desync, as Minerva said. But for me personally, I'm working on a documentary. It's right now we only have a working title, so and I'm not sure how I feel about the working title yet. So but like basically, it's I'm interviewing people around the sort of like less touristy neighborhoods of Toronto, and I'm sort of figuring out like I started from this. It's about I have not figured out how to pitch this concisely yet, so please bear with me. But basically, it's about guerrilla gardening and placemaking in an urban environment. So guerrilla gardening is kind of like gardening without permission, and like basically like as I sort of like started talking to people, I found like there was this undercurrent of like discontent with the city of Toronto and how they sort of ran public spaces and who they allowed to like run those public spaces, and what does the involvement of like municipal bureaucracy do to communal space, and is it good or is it bad? And spoilers, it's mostly kind of bad. So yeah, that's coming up probably in 1 or 2 years. That will be that will come out. Yeah.
Great. I can't wait to cry while I'm watching. So before we go, does anyone from the audience have any questions to ask our lovely filmmakers? Okay.
Just to this last point you just said about municipal politics in the context of a documentary you are making and thinking about how political landscapes can shift over time. But as a filmmaker, you know going in, like, I'm locked into this project for like 2 years, right? So especially as a documentarian, how do you think through that or feel about that? Are you nervous about that? Like, is it possible the content of your film will change throughout production if you're involved in it over 2 years? Yeah, I'm just curious about that from like a documentarian's perspective. Like, life continues to change while you're in post.
Yeah.
So like, what do you do?
Yeah.
To be honest, I think I'm still kind of navigating that. I think part of what colors that is because where I'm from in Singapore, we kind of there's like a very we kind of like avoid politics in like mention it because there's like that's kind of radioactive if you don't say the right things. So I'm not really sure what to do for this one. I know it will be political. I know at the beginning when the people I was interviewing, they started like expressing these like the political side of the issue. I was kind of mentally pushing back against it a little bit, but now that I've had more time to sit on it, I realize like politics is a part of like our life, and like there's no way to sort of like separate politics from like the topic of climate change. There's no way to like talk about like land use and gardening on public land and not have like politics enter into it in some way and talk about that. Yeah.
Well, we've run out of time, so does anyone have any questions? No? Going once, going twice. Okay, gone. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it. Your films are amazing, and I know that you guys are just gonna be like super mega pop stars people, and then we're gonna be like, oh my gosh, we knew them, like, you know, and we met them. So sign the autograph before you like blow up so I can sell it on eBay later. That would be great. Guardians is still available online until Sunday and at thenickelfestival.com, and Feeling the Apocalypse is showing Saturday at 3:30. So make sure everyone shows up Saturday, and for the people who aren't here and for the people in the back, show up Saturday 3:30 to watch Feeling the Apocalypse. Bring some tissues and bring some ice cream because you will need it. So yeah, this has been the Nickel Before Show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.